Get my brand. Sure.
Hey friends, welcome to the Johnson City Living Podcast, where we learn about the people, places, events, and flavors that make Johnson City a lovely place to live. I'm your host, Colin Johnson, with the Colin and Carly Group and Keller Williams Realty, and it is a beautiful February day here. I'm here with a good new friend of mine, Emmett Brost, and I am super excited for you guys to meet this wonderful guy. He's awesome. I got to meet his family. They won a Dos Gatos gift card, and I got to meet his whole crew, except for the dogs, and they were just amazing. So welcome to the show, the podcast, Emmett. How are you?
Good. Thank you. Good morning.
Yeah. So you may have, we had one guy come from Maine. I don't know if we've had anybody from the Pacific West. So you may be the farthest traveler for this podcast, which is pretty exciting.
Well, thanks.
So tell me how far you drove this morning. You probably started a week ago. I'm just kidding. You've been here a little while, but tell the listeners a little bit about Emmett and his family first, and then we'll talk about where you came from.
Yeah, well, so first off, you got to meet my wife and kids, like you said. And it's kind of like, hey, I got to apologize that Jana's not here. Like, she's the reason, I tell everybody, she's the reason people like us. Yeah. So, and it's kind of funny.
Said she wasn't coming, I was kind of like, we should just cancel.
Right?
But
thanks.
We didn't.
I would. So my name's Emmett Brost. My wife's name is Jana. I have 4 kids, Ida Lily, Jethro, Boaz, and Henrietta.
Awesome names.
Thank you. They're as unique as their names are. Yeah. So just wonderful, wonderful kids. And I just thoroughly believe that God gives us kids as a blessing.
Amen.
And that's, I think that's one of if you look at kind of some of the several reasons as to why we looked to leave and come somewhere like Johnson City, it was the valuing of children. It's just, it's nice to come to a place in a culture where it's like people stopped in our first week here. My wife, she shared about how this woman just stopped and talked to her for a little bit. And when my kids would try to interrupt, she would just like put her hand up. But then once she was done talking to my wife, she talked to each one of our kids separately. And it was just, that's part of the huge blessing of coming out here. Yeah. Yeah. So we lived in... We come from Washington State. Everybody wants to know state or D.C.
Right. Right. A little further away.
A little further away, probably the same in terms of craziness.
8 hours or 8 days.
Mm-hmm. So for us, it took, I didn't even fully do the math on it, but we drove something like 2,500 miles.
Did you guys take the Oregon Trail? Is that how you?
Felt like it. It felt like 2,500 miles. The funniest thing is that we sold our house, we sold our business in Washington State. So we owned a budget blinds. We were budget blinds at Puyallup and Tacoma for 8.5 years. So I think I've probably been in over 4,000 houses in that time. And I always joke with clients when I'm in their homes that I'm like, I'm sorry, but I'm just a little too comfortable in people's houses. So forgive me if I like walk in and tell you that this is your master bedroom or not. So
that's funny. Yeah.
But we came from Puyallup, Tacoma. So it's just south of Seattle.
Okay.
By about, if you had the traffic like out here, about 40 minutes from Seattle.
I got some buddies from Bellingham.
Okay.
Is that close?
No,
your eyes just lit
that's
up
the
a little
other
bit.
end. Yeah, okay. Bellingham has Western Washington University in it.
Yep.
That's where I went to. I started out at Skagit Valley College, where I met my wife Jana.
Nice.
And then I went to Western, which is about 30 miles north of like the Mount Vernon area.
Okay.
And Western's in Bellingham. Kind of cool. It has kind of a similar feel and look to Johnson City, actually, except for it's right on the Puget Sound.
Yeah.
So bigger bodies of water.
Huge.
But that's where I went to school and got an acting degree.
What?
Yeah. So that's really where I learned to, I had to do lighting design, costume design, makeup design, set design. I can put on eyeliner better than most women.
Nice.
I've had to sew a few things. No makeup. I'm naturally this beautiful.
Just naturally good looking. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, you got a degree in acting.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
Well, my wife, once I graduated, I was like, hey, we're married now. If I ever get injured and or die, I want you to be able to take care of yourself. I want you to go to school.
Yeah.
And so worked to put her through school. And she got a degree at Western in human resources.
Nice.
And then stayed on for another 2 years and got a master's in student affairs. And so while she was there, she created while she was at Whatcom, which is the community college right next to it.
Yeah.
She put together the Veteran Safe Zone project. And then she brought that to Western as well. Because my father-in-law is he's a retired E9 from the Navy, from aviation ordnance. So there's a lot of people in the military coming back. I graduated from college in 2006.
Yeah.
Graduated from high school in 2000. So I took about 6 years to get an acting degree, not to become a doctor.
Smart.
Just for acting.
Well, it pays really well.
That's why I own a different business.
That's right.
So, yeah. So we lived there. We were married 2005 and said we're going to wait for 5 years because I had a mentor. His name was Meshach. And I went to this one guy at the church that I was like, man, I respect that guy because he dropped the SH word from the pulpit. And I was like, that guy he's my
legit.
guy.
He's real.
He's legit. He knows how to bring it.
That's right.
But he's such a good man of God, and he was really challenging everybody about just being fake about their faith, and so
I like it.
So I went to him, and he said that he started looking over my head, and he was like going like this as I was talking to him, and I was trying to ask him to mentor me because Jana was like, "Hey, when are you going to propose to me?" And I was like, "Man, you've met my family. Are you serious?" And so I was like, I'm not a good enough man to be a good husband to you. I just wasn't raised in a family where that was valued. And so, God put that on my heart. Yeah. And so I went to Felix is his name. And, he later shared with me that he was looking over my head for anybody bigger in the lobby than me. Cause he's like, his words were like, man, this cat's got some stuff to learn and he'll probably beat me up if I tell him this stuff. I'm like, I've never been in a fight.
That's awesome.
So, I have 4 older brothers. So I guess there's just like I've never been in an actual sanctioned fight in the world, but right. Definitely.
Oh yeah.
There's
some basement cage matches going on down there.
Yes.
4 brothers.
Sure. Yeah. So, I was in the Shakespeare Festival. I was like the vice president for a while of the Shakespeare Festival in Mount Vernon, did several seasons there. And then I was on my way to becoming a State Farm insurance agent, right? And
it seems like a natural transition.
It really does. Because while I was going to college, I worked for Hertz Car Rental. Uh-huh. And at one point I managed a branch. My whole time through college, I worked about 50 to 60 hours a week and taking 20 hours of school. That's awesome. Somehow find a way to get married in there.
Did your dad work that hard? Is that caught more than, you just watched him do that, or you just felt the necessity to do it?
There was kind of a necessity. So we were kind of a poor family. Yeah. So my actually where I learned it the most, it really ingrained was for a year we lived with my grandparents in North Idaho. Nice. Where I was born.
Oh, cool.
And I just got to tell people I'm bald. I can't grow hair. I'm not a skinhead. From North Idaho. I actually had somebody ask me that when I was in their house. And
I thought you were going to say something more like Mr. Potato Head.
Oh, no. I actually had a guy goes, so you're from North Idaho? You're a skinhead? And I was like, no, man, I'm just bald. Thanks for pointing that out.
Thanks, bro.
But yeah, no, for a year we lived when I was like in first grade with my grandparents. Uh-huh. And my grandpa Bob North, he was a very hard worker. He had 9 kids. And we lived way out in the middle of nowhere in North Idaho, out by Sagal area, which is just south of Sandpoint. And the guy just worked. He worked really, really hard.
Farmer?
And no, actually, it's so crazy. He was an engineer for GTE. He started out when he was Ma Bell. Worked there, retired with a pension, all that kind of stuff. And then when he was 75 years old, he actually died geocaching in Canada because he slid down a mountain. He was running down the mountain because the scree started to fall out, and he just started running with it and then jumped to catch a tree and jumped wrong. And yeah, so at 75, he was sprinting down a mountain.
That's a cool story.
Yeah, when I went to the funeral, this gal got up who's like 96. She's like, Bob was on my roof the day before hanging my satellite dish for me. So
just a guy that got after it every day.
Yep. He said
that's amazing.
When he retired, he was busier than when he had a full-time job.
I think that's how my parents are currently.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
so giving your life away, working hard, that was something you saw and got.
Yeah,
probably caught that one.
Yeah, and then I played sports, and like I grew up in the era of Michael Jordan playing basketball, right? And everybody suddenly becoming millionaires playing sports, and so for me, sports was going to be my means for getting out, and so it was just I was going to work harder than everybody else to get to do it, and series of unfortunate events and injuries, like I blew my knee out my junior year and tore my rotator cuff.
What was your sport you played?
Baseball, but I blew my knee out as a quarterback in football.
Oh man!
So, but you know what? It's if I hadn't have blown my knee out, I wouldn't have met this girl whose parents said, if I want to date her, I have to go to church.
I like that.
And she was very beautiful, and so I was like, that's a small price to pay. Like your daughter's like a 14 out of 10, and so
and I just have to go a couple hours a week,
right? At first, that's what it was.
Yeah.
I mean, I was not from a good family.
I was going to ask me, can I ask your conversion story? Like, tell me about how you.
And yeah, so.
And it doesn't have a lot to do with blinds, but.
No, it doesn't, but in some ways it does, because I'm always saying the basics are the basics for a reason. I was not raised in a family that was very friendly to Christianity. As a matter of fact, like the way that I look back on it, I was kind of raised to hate Christians. Like they're all hypocrites and liars is what I was taught.
Yeah.
So it was really unfortunate, right? So, which is unfortunate because the testimony of people's lives around my parents just must not have been, but I dated this girl. Her name is Bree. And I started going to church, and I would show up. I hate to say this, but I would show up hungover from the night before partying, and her parents knew it, but I was there. When I'd walk through it was Smoky Point Community Church, and I would go in and I would be fine, but if I saw anybody I knew, I would hide. And like I would literally hear a voice as I walked through the door saying, if you come in here, this place will burn down because you're here. Yeah. So I would hear it every time, and I always just felt like worried that it was going to happen.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, that's definitely not Jesus' voice.
I know, right? I know. Absolutely not. And so I started going to church with her and her family for several months, and then I started to feel really convicted. And I went to her, and it was a plea for help. And I was like, hey, I don't think I'm going to church for the right reasons, and I don't think God wants me to do this. And I need to take like a short break just so I can understand and come back, get my heart right and come. And she thought I was breaking up with her. And I was really trying to ask her, like, can I start meeting with your dad a little bit to learn some more? Because my parents were like, you're an idiot. They were mad at me. They threatened to kick me out of the house when I was 17 because of it. They didn't, but there was the threats of it. And so anyways, we broke up for a summer. And I ended up dating this other girl because I would just take my question of validation I was taught to just to take it to, like as John Eldridge talks about in Wild at Heart, like to the world, to women, or to your abilities, right? And so I ended up dating this other girl, left to a leadership camp. While I was there, I ended up like going and hanging out with the Christians, which was just not me, singing worship music with them. And I was like, this is awesome. I don't know why, but I really like it. But it's like not something I would have admitted to people when I got home.
Right.
And then I went to go visit this girl, my girlfriend, and I was like, we broke up. And I was still hanging out with my ex-girlfriend, the church family, her stepbrother. And I was like, hey, man, I was going to go down to his house after I broke up with this girl. And I was actually on my way to go, like, get something from him because two girls that I'd met at this leadership camp wanted to go to Birch Bay to, like, some condos with one of their moms and hang out for the weekend. So, like, this is, like, that all sounds really bad. And I'm on my way down there, and I'm listening to... Like, I was kind of a white trash kid, so I'm driving down in my Subaru. It's all dented up. I have a big old skull in my front lip, sleeveless T-shirt, covered in grass from doing landscaping. Like, I just look to the part.
Yeah.
And I hear George Strait's Desperado for like the fifth time that day. And honestly, I can never remember hearing it in my life. And so I'm just driving along and I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I really like, and I talked to this girl, Bree. I was like, hey, I'm coming down to see your brother, but you know, I'd like to try to come to church with you guys if at all possible, or at least, you know, is it okay if I hang out with your brother? I don't even think I mentioned church yet. I was like, is it okay if I hang out with your brother? She's like, well, I'm not getting back with you. And I was like, that's not even on my radar. Like, I just want to be around a good family.
Yeah.
And so
that's cool that your heart had that yearning just to be around loving people. You know, like
it wasn't a very like, you know, my parents, they love in their own way, but it wasn't tangible. And so, so I'm on my way there, and my family, like, they believed in like spirit animals and all that kind of stuff. And like a red-tailed hawk was just like it. And it's kind of cool because in some of the scriptures you hear David talking about like the hawks and that kind of stuff. And so anyways, I'm driving along and I'm like, God, what do you want me to do? Just like, I'm kind of desperate. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, I'm just at the end of my rope here. And I look over, and right on a fence post is a red-tailed hawk. And this thing like stares through my soul. Like, I make eye contact with this thing.
How cool is that?
And I'm like, look at it, and I go, and I just put my arms, I go, fine, I'll do whatever you tell me to do.
Yeah.
And so that was
your surrender moment.
Yeah. And if I could make any recommendation to anybody that wants to become a believer, like, just say like, I want you in my heart.
Oh man.
Because when you say I'll do whatever you tell me to do, you're actually signing up for something. So I won't trade it for the world, but it's definitely, And I would say that if you look at it, my trajectory, I have a friend, he was like the head of an organization. I think they have it out here called Young Life. Mm-hmm. And I was having lunch with Ross, and he's like, you know, one of the things is you're just not satisfied because your life was really low down here. And so your trajectory towards Jesus is like this. Because you've tasted it low, you've tasted it high. How could you not want that other, right? Mm-hmm. So I didn't expect to have some emotions on that.
That's
but,
awesome.
You know?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I think he can do things in our hearts and minds that no one else can. And fills that void that everybody in, I think, the world is looking for, you know, in other things. I forget who said it, but we all have a God-shaped hole in our heart, you know. And so when you feel it, and you look at a red-tailed hawk and he's looking back at you, the guy who created the hawk and you said, okay, I love you, Emmett. And, you know, I mean, how special is that? I'm getting emotional about it. So.
I love it. And like, I guess one of the things to say is like, you know, as I share my story with other people, sometimes people are like, oh my gosh, but it's like, I tell it because if he's willing to like rescue me, who wouldn't he rescue?
Yeah.
So
he'll come after anybody. And,
anyone.
And I think, you know, we're all hearing him call us. Mm-hmm. And if you're listening and you're hearing that calling in your heart somewhere, and, you know, I think we try and cover it up a lot with just stuff and like life and push it down and play music and do other things to get distracted and try and, you know, cover it up. But if you can sit and listen and then, like you said, get a mentor or somebody who's more spiritually wise and lead you down that path. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful exchange, and when you turn your life over to him and just just to change your whole world. So I would encourage you to do that. So
absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. Okay, Johnson City living.
Yeah.
I usually start off with this question. What's your favorite thing about Johnson City?
Well, I was just listening to is it Dr. Tim from
John? Yep.
Yeah. And you know, he said it's the kindness of the people. And that's what I'd say. And a lot of people are like, oh, the mountains. And I'm going to be honest, like I've been a snob with it because every single day I drove home and I looked at Mount Rainier only 40 miles away. And it was huge. It took up so much of the skyline, you know, but the mountains here, if you look at it, it is like the foothills in the mountains when we were in Washington. Because like when you get up, you're like, well, you're up in the mountains, so you don't really recognize how high up you are.
Right.
So it still has that same look and same feel. The traffic is great.
It's great.
Oh man, if I was like to plan anywhere for like 30 miles away, that's an hour and a half to 2 hour drive.
Isn't that crazy?
And like here, like, you know, I drive 24 miles to get here, and I was like, I made it in 24 minutes.
Right. Yes. Like if you can't go over 60 miles an hour here the whole way, something's wrong.
Yes.
There's a wreck somewhere on the interstate or something.
Oh, yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yeah. So people are just kind.
Yeah, your mountains out there are pretty impressive. We went to Portland last year and Mount Hood.
Yeah.
And you're just like, whoa, that's a mountain.
It's in your face.
Yeah. And I grew up here, so these are like our little mountains, but I love them.
They're still gorgeous.
What do you and Jana like to do for fun when you're not with your brood of 4 kiddos?
We like to get out and actually get to like explore the city, cities, right? Mm-hmm. The Tri-Cities, man, God's irony just cracks me up because the only other place in the United States that has the Tri-Cities is Washington, Pasco, Kennewick, and Richland.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've always had a thing for Appalachia, which on the West Coast, it's Appalachia.
Yep. They don't know what they're doing.
So no, they don't. And that's kind of the thing where I was like,
we'll teach them how to talk if they come here.
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
I've thrown in a y'all once.
Yeah. You got to work on those.
We're checking out the restaurants. Mm-hmm. With the weather, everybody's like, it rains so much. And I'm like, oh, this isn't actually that bad.
Yeah.
It's pretty normal. The weather is really close to Washington, except for more mild.
Gotcha.
So,
and you came, how long have you been here now?
Since December 15th.
Yeah. So you're like, oh, this is rainy and it's like semi like home. Just wait, because starting in April till like November, it's just awesome.
Yeah, I know. Summer doesn't start in Washington until July 5th.
That's
it's like everything waits. Like, all right, you want a 4th of July party? That's cool. We're going to rain.
Yeah.
And then
every 4th of July, but the 5th, we can do the 5th of July.
All right. And then like Halloween over there, it's like 38 degrees and raining sideways. So you're like, all right, man. So
that's the problem. I think people are getting smarter and they're like, we don't have to live in this just cold, rainy, desolate whatever it is that's bad about the weather. We can go down to God's country and live in
God's country
and live in Appalachia. And yeah. And so I think that's why we're getting a lot of people here. And then they're like, people from the South are coming up too. Like, we don't have to sweat like crazy all year long. We can come up from Florida. We don't have to stay here. We can go back down in the winter. But yeah,
one of the things that I hope for is, like one of the reasons why we came out, obviously God was like, go check this place out. Mm-hmm. Go check it out. And we drove out here and we were like,
so let's talk about
pinpoint
on a map, Tri-Cities to Tri-Cities.
to Washington County.
The Lord is right to Washington County. He keeps validating
I go to a church now that's at Washington College in Limestone.
Oh, yeah.
Like I can never leave Washington.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's on the dollar bill. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, there are a few other cities besides Johnson City, Tri-Cities.
Yeah. So we've been to Nashville several times because for Budget Blinds, they have like an international national convention every year. And so we'd been at the Gaylord a few times in Nashville, which is like,
beautiful. Oh, my gosh.
It's amazing. And you're kind of like, well, what's it like over there in Nashville? And you're like, Gaylord's awesome. You don't really need to go anywhere.
All the hotels have this huge botanical acre in the middle of it. Looks like the Garden of Eden.
Yes.
Why wouldn't you just stay there all the time?
And so, but we ventured out a little bit and we were just like, man, people are just so nice and so cool here. And that at one point we were like, there was no Budget Blinds available in the area. And so we looked into another franchise called Tailored Living, which is now Tailored Closets and Premier Garage. They like separated the two of them. And we purchased the rights to that for Hendersonville.
Okay.
And we were going to work on running our stuff out of Washington at the same time as running it here. And we were going to move to Hendersonville.
Yeah.
But I'd had too many sports injuries. And the guy that was going to help me open it all up, I ended up paying for him to go to like a train the trainer for handgun instructions. And he was a police officer. And through that class, he ended up getting offered a job to be the lead weapons instructor for the police academy in Washington State. Yeah.
That's cool.
Really cool to be a part of like helping him achieve his dream. And just huge blessing to him and his family. And so cool to get to be a part of that.
Yeah.
But then I was like, well, shoot. I can't really, I can't do this. Yeah. And so, we ended up coming out last August. We came out there was like a vendors expo because all the conferences and stuff had been canceled because, COVID and stuff. And while we're like right before we left, I was like, is there anything for budget blinds available? I can't do the cabinets, like just too many injuries and
just too heavy, too much.
Yeah. And I mean, I could do the work, but I'd be hurt for like a week, you know? And so it's no way to live with small kids. No. And so I was like, is there anything else? And Jana had brought this up before once out here. And I was like, I don't know. A couple years ago, I was like, I don't know, like Appalachia, like it's probably going to be, you know, like a lot of just like
blinds on
summer teeth and like single wides. And I was such a jerk for thinking that. Yeah. But I mean, that's kind of the impression that you have when you live over there.
Yeah, just like how we had running water and electricity. When you got here.
A lot of people are surprised that everybody doesn't live in a longhouse.
Like I got shoes on too.
I can't believe it.
Isn't that crazy?
And socks.
Well, I'd put the socks on.
And your teeth are, I mean, you got straight teeth. You know, so anyways, we were like, God really put it on our heart. Like we're sitting in our hotel room waiting for like the convention part. And I was like, or no, it was before we left. And I was like, why don't we just look at that area? And we had rented a car and we were going to visit our maid of honor. She got, they moved out to Lenore City.
Oh, yeah.
And so my wife had been out there. And then we came out and visited her when we were looking at Hendersonville. I was like, man, this place is beautiful. And so I was like, let's go out to that territory and see. And so we drove up to Bristol. Didn't even see Kingsport because you kind of missed it off of the 81, right? Mm-hmm. And then we drove down here to Johnson City. And as we're driving, I was just like, this is so green, so clean. There's no garbage. And it's because it's cool. It's because, you know, the local like prisons go out and you go clean. You earn a little bit to stay. And so,
well, and then there's this one lady. I need to stop and learn her name. And I think, but anyway, she's after it all the time.
Cleaning all the time.
I mean, just doesn't care. She's just out there getting after it. And I'm like,
love it.
I love you.
Purpose.
Thank you for keeping our whole area looking beautiful. I mean, she does a great job.
Oh yeah. When we came out, it was beautiful. And so,
I think a lot of it blows out of the back of people's trucks. They don't understand that it's just going to blow out. And so if they would please put your trash in a bag in your car or something, you know, tie it down, do something.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty windy. I've noticed. Yeah. So it's like, you know, like you're in a neighborhood and trash cans blow over after the garbage guy comes through and, you know, trash blows out the little bit that didn't get dumped out. So,
yeah.
But I mean, overall, like it was still beautiful and super green. So while it was all browns in Washington State, the evergreen state, and 96 degrees over there, it was 88 degrees here and green. And then we pulled down into Johnson City and we ended up going to Label.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That place is fantastic. Uh-huh. I like nice whiskey and bourbon.
Oh, cool.
And I like fly fishing and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so we went to Label, got an old fashioned, and it was delicious, made with Buffalo Trace. I believe it was.
Good one. That's their well bourbon. I mean, how good is that?
Right. And the gal that was helping us, she started just chatting. She was so nice. Just I can't. She's so kind and so polite. And she's like, so what are you all doing here? And we're like, we're actually looking to maybe move here. And she's like, well, that's great. What do you like to do? And my wife's like, well, he likes fly fishing. She's like, well, my daddy's a fly fish instructor. Like, it takes people on trips.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So she wrote down his name and number and gave it to me.
It wasn't Brownie, she's like, Brownie Lyles, was it?
No.
Oh, okay.
Monticello, I think is the last name.
Oh,
so
cool.
Down in Greenville. And so and then I learned, I was like, wait a minute, this is like the Montana fly fishing of the East.
We have like world-class trout waters here. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. And so, unfortunately, I tore my rotator cuff in the move on the way out here.
Oh, no.
And so I'm doing physical therapy, and people are like, so where have you gone fly fishing? I was like, don't talk to me about it, but I want to go.
You can do it.
And Mitch did say he wants to go at some point, so we are definitely going to exchange information, and he's going to show me where I can go.
Well, my neighbor right across the street, Justin, Schroeder, he's a fly fishing guide too.
Oh, really?
So we can hook you up.
Please. I love it.
He wants to take me too, so we need
It's like fish hunting. Like
is.
Reel casting, that kind of, like, that's why people like bass fishing, because it has an element of like hunting, but like you can't pick up and cast when you're 50 feet away and land it 8 feet away from where you were to catch something.
Right.
You can with fly fishing.
Yeah. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So that's how you got to East Tennessee.
Yeah. That was the main. And when we were there, it was just like, this is the place. Like, and it was, when we got back home, we were just like, it was so hard to even be in Washington State, because we were like, wow, we've tasted Eden. So
now, when you were doing the Shakespearean acting, did you like pretend you were like some sort of blind installer one time, and you're like, "This seems pretty cool. Like I got a character I'm playing today. He's installing blinds."
Oh my gosh.
How did you get to
That's
from
hilarious.
thespian to blind installer, like, or blind company? Like, I don't even know how. That's a good leap.
Yeah, it really is. So like I went from getting my acting degree while renting cars for Hertz Car Rental.
Yep.
To still acting and working for State Farm Insurance to become an agent, to my brother talking me out of that and opening up a Little Caesars Pizza in Oak Harbor.
Is your brother named Jake? Is he from State Farm? Now he started that whole thing.
No. Yeah. No, he convinced me not to do it. And one of the worst pieces of advice I ever got in my life. But at the same time, I learned so much. It's unreal.
Yeah.
Restaurant is just a whole other world. And I'm so nice. I try to be so nice in restaurants. Little Caesars Pizza.
Little Caesars Pizza.
Yeah.
Hot and ready.
First job I was ever fired from was Seven Lakes Pizza.
Seven Lakes Pizza.
Yeah, up in Stanwood area, Washington. So I worked a roundabout way through that, and then opened my Little Caesars, and then I ended up moving down to the Tacoma area because my store didn't open up as well as it should have. It was just oversaturated, island down. And we moved down. My wife quit working for the college that she got her degree at Western, and our daughter was born while our store was in its grand opening. And so I worked 4,000 hours in the first 10 months that restaurant was open.
Holy smokes.
And my daughter was born. It was kind of crazy. It was great. I had hair up until that point.
Yeah, I bet.
And then, so we moved down, helped my brother run his stores, and then created a burger restaurant, a concept called Stacks Burgers.
Really?
And yeah, on top of like the Little Caesar stuff. And I just kind of reached a point where baby 2 was born, and my daughter, like, they came to visit me because I started managing the burger restaurant while doing all marketing communications for the Little Caesar stores. And my daughter started crying when they left because she thought I'd actually moved out of the house. Like I didn't live at home anymore because I was working so much. And so
that was kind of the straw.
It was the straw. And so I just told my brother I couldn't do restaurant anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of funny. Little Budget Blinds was his recommendation to me. He's like, So you're just going to quit? And I was like, yeah. He's like, what are you going to do? I was like, I have absolutely no idea. I just haven't had time to even think about a job. Goes, so you're quitting without any income? And I was like, yep. I go, honestly, Seb, it's so hopeless. Only Jesus can do anything about it. So I'm kind of excited to see what he does.
Yeah.
And so he kind of shook his head like, okay. And he's a believer. So he was like, oh, okay. And so I came in and I met with him, and he was like, you should look at Budget Blinds. And I was like, you mean like mini blinds and stuff? Had no idea what it was. And so, and then he explained to me other business partners of his that had Little Caesars. 2 brothers were selling their stores and going into open. And one of them was moving back to Washington, and he ended up being my neighboring franchise for 8.5 years. He's still there. Paul and Cassie Moorhead. And they are some very funny and very, very nice people. Like I love Paul and Cassie. And so, and their brother, Paul's brother, Joel, was the one that got him into Budget Blinds. And so, yeah, I was just like, wow, if they're doing it, like they're not really into any like the, like design or anything like that. And so I was like, man, my degree, like theater, like I did actually a lot of design and concept. And so, I was like, I think I could probably do that. I think I'll do well. So we went down to training. I had my interview in my front driveway, all covered. There's just a theme with me in sleeveless T-shirts, being covered in grass, making big decisions. Sitting in my driveway again. I have stopped chewing, but I had one in at that time.
Did you see a hawk?
No, I didn't see a hawk.
Oh man!
I know. I would have made it better.
That would have been really cool.
But had the interview.
Full circle.
I know.
Story.
Well, it's Seahawks, right?
There you go.
There you go. Just kidding. No, so I had my interview, and normally you have to go in and do like a discovery day and all that kind of stuff. And the guy that interviewed me, very, very good believer, good Christian, and he just was like, Emmett, I'm going to take a risk on you. We're going to get you through here. When can you come down to training? I was like, well, I'm kind of retired right now in my 30s. So when's the next one? And it was in a week. And so we went down to training a week later, and I was like, well, here's one thing. We have a baby. He's 3 months old, and can we bring him? Because my wife breastfeeds, and because we believe it's a healthy way.
For sure.
And so we brought him down, and the 5 guys, the founders, 4 of them were there, and throughout they would teach the training, and each one of them, whenever they were teaching, like they would carry Jethro around while they were teaching the class. Like it was so cool. Such a cool company. to be a part of. And so we've been, those guys ended up selling, and then the company that bought them ended up selling to another company called JM Family out of Florida, actually. And it has been, the company's so much bigger. It's like worth over $18 billion. And
Whoa.
yeah, it's really
That's a lot
cool.
of lines, bro.
It's great to have that much backing, and they have this same, this company has the same beliefs, right, and the same like understanding and work ethic, and they're not interested. One of the things is like they're not interested in stealing a piece of the pie from anybody. They're interested in just making the pie bigger.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my way of doing it. Like, I'm not coming into town to steal business from anybody. It's more like there's so many houses and so many people, so I'm not trying to compete with anybody.
Yeah. They're building 1,000 more this year, so
Right. Well,
that's only good for you.
Hope so.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Our pie is getting bigger.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
And so tell our listeners about budget blinds, what you offer.
Yeah.
If they're listening and they're like, yeah, I wake up every morning, the sun's just killing me.
Right. Well,
you can fix that problem.
It's the one thing that's always been like a bane for us is like the name budget blinds. And so like I've had so many people be like, well, you ain't very budget, are you? And that's from Washington. That's not people saying it out here.
It depends on your budget.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a style for every budget.
Right.
Yeah. So
Elon Musk's budget kind of thing.
You know, I'm working on getting those people. That'd be awesome. So basically, Budget Blinds is the largest custom window covering company in North America.
Wow.
There's over 1,000 franchisees in over 1,300 territories, from what I understand. My numbers may be off a little bit, but not by much.
Gotcha.
And the reason why that's important is because when you have that much buying power, like we sell more window coverings than everybody else, like combined. And so when you have numbers like that, vendors want you to sell their product.
Right. So you're not making them and selling them. You're just using.
Yep, vendors.
I got you.
Yeah, we have a vendor alliance. There's over 30 vendors in the vendor alliance. For an assortment of things that we do. Like we can do faux iron, like wrought iron. And so you can have that put into like above your entryway.
That's cool.
We do blinds, shades, shutters, draperies. We do have accessed area rugs, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, we have a lot of the service to it. A lot of people are really surprised when it comes to custom drapery. Like, I mean, you saw me when we came in. Like, I'm not a small guy. I'm like 6 foot, almost 4, like 250. I look like I should be building.
Big fella. I was like, whoa.
I should probably build your house and not give you design advice, right? Which is why I try to tell most of them, like, look, I can put on eyeliner. Probably better.
I do have the acting degree.
I don't judge unless you put me on the spot for that. But so like with it, drapery is actually can be pretty expensive because it's meant to be functional. And so a lot of times what we run into is there'll be people like, well, why can't I just go down to a box store? Like what's different about you in a box store? And for the most part, like part of my State Farm insurance days when I got my Series 6 and 63 for selling securities.
Yeah.
The guy that taught it, he made a big deal about Home Depot and Lowe's in the area. He was just very fixated on them because he's like, their prospectus is just so well created for you to read. And the thing is that they used to be just for builders. And then they realized, well, we have all these people coming in and they want to buy in smaller amounts and we can actually sell it for higher and make more money.
Right.
So their whole thing is that the DIYer generally replaces something every 1 to 3 years. And so that's generally the quality of what they carry.
Gotcha.
And so when you're looking at most like the window coverings and that kind of stuff, the really, really cheap pieces that you can get in there are 1 to 3 years.
Sure.
When you spend more money on some of the other products, those would be like our lower tier entry level type of window coverings. Mm-hmm. And so like we have stuff, I always want to find out what's the style people have, what's the durability that they want, and then the budget. And like within style, I always want to find out like, what do you want it to accomplish? Is it privacy? Is it light control? Is it insulation? Is it just looking really good? Because we can do that.
We're all for it.
Yeah. And what functionality do you want? Do you want it automated? Do you want a cordless lift? Do you want like a wand that you can push a button on?
That sounds cool.
Yeah. Do you want to be able to like say to your watch, like, hey Siri, open up the window coverings?
You can do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
The house that we sold over there in Washington State, like it had Lutron shades throughout the whole thing. And I had all my light switches switched out to Lutron. And so, cause we carry Lutron and
that's cool.
I had it. So everything was like on timers. And when you have little kids, like you're not allowed out of your room until the window covering's open and the lights turn on.
Oh,
right.
I like it.
Yeah. So
we have friends that just use a clock. They're like, when the hand gets to 7, you can come out,
We have like this little unicorn now for our daughter, for Henrietta, that's like pink when it's time to be asleep and green when it's time to get out of bed. And we're like, what color is it? She's like, pink. And you're like, does that mean you stay in bed? She's like, no.
No. It means I come out.
She's 2.5.
Let's say somebody wants to connect with you and they've got a blind issue. They want a window covering. They want a drapery. They want something.
Yeah.
How do our listeners, what's the best way to get a hold of you, Emmett?
Well, I mean, you can Google us if you put in, budget blinds at Tri-Cities, Tennessee.
Because you got the area. You're the man.
Yeah, I mean, we go all the way from just north of Kingsport, like at the Virginia border,
right,
all the way out to the corner of North Carolina, Virginia, all the way down south of Greenville along the border, back up. Huge area of land.
Help me understand, how many people, did Budget Blinds do like a demographic? Do we know how many people are in your service area? Like, because I feel like it's over 1 million.
It's a lot, and I did not get all of those numbers.
Okay.
It's kind of one of those situations where as a business owner, you want to be very like diligent for demographics. And it was more like God saying, go here. So we went.
So you just went.
Yeah.
Well, I heard like 10 years ago, within a 50-mile radius, which would get you into North Carolina, there's 1 million people around. This is a 50-mile radius of the airport. There'd be.
Yeah, like I heard there was over 500,000 people just in the Tri-Cities area.
Yeah, I would think that's pretty.
Yeah, and so I mean that's.
But then you get out Jonesboro. I mean, like you go to Churchill, even you're down in.
Yeah.
I mean, all over the place. You got Irwin and
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of people. We have like a lot of people spread out. People want their elbow room. They want a little land, and you'll just drive, and you're like, oh, I didn't even know this whole little neighborhood was out here in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
So you're going to get to see the whole country.
Yeah.
Or our whole little
our whole little area of the corner. Yeah. So
you're like me. You drive all over the place all the time.
All the time.
Which is just fun.
It really is. I mean, you get alone time.
Yeah.
So time not listen to any music, time to listen to podcasts.
That's right. Thank you for that. I'm glad you listen.
So you can Google us. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. Budget Blinds at Tri-Cities, Tennessee. So TN, because again, there's another Tri-Cities in the country in Washington.
That's right.
And then also like our phone number 423-360-1600. Let me see. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, good job.
So still getting used to the new phone number.
423 area.
Yeah. So
you're local now.
Yeah, it's really, really cool.
Yeah. So. Anything I forgot to ask you that you wanted to share about?
No, I guess one of the things is about like our the company, and I know this maybe isn't like the same for every Budget Blinds because we're all independently owned and operated. Like our core values and like our mission. Like my core value, number one, because I've led ministries, and I'd always tell people like, hey, how are you bringing the kingdom when you're at work? And I'd hear people all the time be like, well, that's easy for you because, you own your own business, or that's easy for you because you're pastoring. And I'm like, well, I own my own business. And they're like, well, so then you can make up your own rules. And I was like, I risk losing a sale every time.
Sure.
And so, but like, I think that's one of our biggest mandates as believers is to bring the kingdom. And I think one of the most wonderful parts about my job is that you hear this in church all the time. The most important conversations happen in the kitchen or at the kitchen table. And almost every single console ends up there. And so my biggest thing is like whether you decide to order from me or not, like that's an opportunity to be bringing the kingdom and also to have it brought to me. Like, like it's ministering to me. And then when I have my employees, it's ministering to my employees. And so our office manager is following us from Washington. But like that's the biggest, I think that's a big aspect of it is that I get to go into all these homes and hear story and share story.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, I mean, you and I get invited into people's most intimate space. It's where they're doing life. They're having celebrations. They're having, just tough moments. And they invite us into that space. And I don't take it lightly. And it sounds like you don't either. And so, maybe we help them with their house sale, or maybe we help them with blinds, or maybe we don't. But we are there, and hopefully they feel like we love them, and we're taking care of them and doing whatever we can to just say, hey, we love you, and thanks for the blind order, or letting me sell your house, or helping you buy a house, or whatever it is. But yeah, how's your heart and how can I help you and pray for you and take care of you? It's just, it's a huge blessing.
Yeah.
And like when you're walking in that and the Spirit's moving, I mean, it's just beautiful and it's just so much fun. It's like, yeah, you're like, okay, what are we going to do today, Lord? You know, like, what are we going to run into and what's going to happen? And it's just exciting. So
I think that's one of the coolest parts about having kids, and then I'll shut up about it. But like, when you have boys, especially, they wake up and like, if they know that like you don't have to go to work, they're like, Dad, what are we doing today? Right. And just like what you're saying, it's like, you know, Dad, what are we doing today?
yeah. So
waking up with that
I was driving in this morning, like, what are we going to do today? You know, like,
it's such a cool way to
all
wake
yours.
up.
Like, let's go. So, what gets you fired up? I do a little fired up Friday video occasionally, and so
Gosh,
Harley and I did it at the Patriot Popcorn where you had coffee this morning.
Yeah, it's great, and yeah, John over there, he's awesome. I think obviously like talking about Jesus, talking about the Lord is huge. Very much fires me up.
Fly fishing after you get your rotator cuff.
Yeah, after get my rotator cuff. Yeah, spending time and my son, like we got him into Taekwondo out here.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so it's really tough being like a very athletic male, and then you watch your son go in and do something, and you're like, I know at some point I was that like uncoordinated, unathletic, and it's just giving me a lot of
patience.
Very much, it's patience, but at the same time, like the other night, like I came and I was like, all right, buddy, I'm gonna help you work on like your 1-2 combo, like your left right, and then your right left. I'm gonna help you like understand what you're doing. And so sat there as like dinner was getting made, and helping him punch and teaching him like, hey man, like, no, you're not slapping with your hands, like you're actually follow through, and here's why. And so really, one of the things is like I used to lead men's ministries. I was led at a Bethany Baptist in Puyallup, Washington for a while. And it's a hard word for a lot of people to say because it looks like Puyallup, but it's like Church Pew and Puyallup. Seeing people come alive, like that's one of my biggest things. Like my goal whenever I was in ministry is I want to see one man fully alive every year, because one person fully alive for the kingdom is way more valuable than 1,000 people faking it. And so, and the thing that's firing me up right now is hearing about like these revivals. Like I've been praying for a revival for the past like 7-8 years. And so seeing that come through is kind of like, I'm getting excited.
Yeah.
And so,
and it just keeps going.
Yeah. And then hearing my kids like talk, wanting to enter into conversations about like their faith is really big.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So
that's awesome.
I mean, spending time with my wife, obviously. She's amazing.
Obviously.
But like aside from that,
we love our wives. We definitely outkicked our coverage is what I say.
Beyond. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. If you need some budget blinds or inexpensive blinds, expensive blinds, we sell them all.
Yep.
Call my new friend Emmett, and he'll come out and help you out. And so thanks for listening as well, listeners. I'm so glad to get to connect with you guys, and I'd love to connect with you. So if you just want to reach out and say hey, or if you want to come be on the podcast like Emmett, I think he was listening out in Washington, and he was like, hey, I'm coming on. And so here he is. So you can be a guest too, and I'd love to connect with you. And and so we thank you for listening. I'm doing a terrible job of ending this today, Emmett.
It's all good.
It's okay.
Don't worry about it.
Till next time, I'm Colin Johnson with the Colin and Carly Group and Keller Williams Realty. I hope you have an awesome day.